Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and today I set my critical eye on a puzzle RPG of Dungeon Girl. It's developed by Untitled, which you probably haven't heard of in the developer world. But you probably have heard of the publisher Fruitback Factory, known for publishing 100% Orange Juice, as well as more critically underrated titles such as Enigma. Dungeon Girl, however, comes out on July 30th, 2018 for Steam for the price of $11.99. But before I begin, this key was obtained from the publisher for the purposes of review. That won't change my opinion of the game in the end, but you should know that because of FTC guidelines, as well as the whole morals thing, you know? Few caveats before we get started. I have about 15 to 20 hours of gameplay, I would say, at this point. Those who are friends of me on Steam will be like, Dragnix, your review and your gameplay says you have about 40. Well, this is the kind of game that you'll put a movie on in the background, and sometimes I kept it on for a period of time without playing it, like overnight once. Oops. One other thing, I need to establish a bias before giving you my thoughts on the game. I do my best to isolate my personal preferences when it comes to reviewing games, but I have to be pretty clear here. Puzzle RPGs are like crack to me. It's the one genre that I really don't seem to find myself having a negative experience in a lot of the time. So keep that in mind going into this review. And one last final thing before I start this review. Unfortunately, because of the nature of this game and the resolution and other problems that I ran into, one of the things that I didn't notice until I played through the game was that in the recording portion, the mouse cursor wasn't showing up properly. So it can be very confusing at times on the screen exactly what I'm doing. So don't pay attention to the cursor and just listen to what I'm saying with the footage in the background. I apologize for this, but it's so late into the process of this review that I can't really go back and start over at this point while still being timely with it. For this video, I'll be focusing on the core gameplay, and there's a bit to go over here, but let me start with the basics. The game has you, Monica, a working explorer, making her way through the legends of a dungeon as part of her job. Each run you'll need to get as far down the dungeon as you can, making sure not to lose all your HP or to lose your mind, but more on that later. You'll do that by matching tiles like any tile puzzle game you've seen before, and matching what you need at what time. Each tile type serves a specific purpose. Search, for example, will have you look for the next set of stairs to get to the next floor. This is how you'll make your way through the dungeon in the end. On the other hand, you'll also want to dig for gold to use when you're back in town. So use those gold work tokens to earn yourself a little ore to convert to gold. Of course, there will be some enemies you'll run into along the way, and you'll have to fight back using the attack tiles. The enemies use turn-based attacks on the left-hand side here, so knock them out before they get a chance to attack, or you'll take some damage. But you can heal that damage with the pink heart tokens, the heal tokens. The only other common tile types are the material types, which earn you things to work with back in town, and the treasure tile types, which hold items that you'll need to get further and further, but you'll need keys to unlock. You'll earn keys by doing randomly generated quests in the bottom right corner here, which range from having certain tiles in a row to facing monsters at low health. They are key to making the most progress in the game, so you'll have to do them if you want to go anywhere. So those are the basics, but how does it play? Well, surprisingly, rather well. There's several factors that play into that, and it all starts with all the secondary mechanics the game has under its surface. Let's start with part of the direct RPG mechanics, the items. This is where more of the puzzle RPG comes into play, as these 6 items are going to be how you're going to more directly affect the puzzle field and take out enemies, and how you're going to customize your experience and how you go about getting further and further into the dungeon. As you kill enemies and make bigger matches, you'll earn item points, and these item points will let you use items to help make up for the randomness of the field. If you're not getting enough attack tiles, for example, and want to take down the boss before he rips you apart, you can bring along a weapon to give you a little bit of extra firepower to finish him off. Or maybe you would prefer to convert work tiles to attack tiles, connecting tiles for more damage and to keep the board moving in the end. Or maybe you'll stay with the defensive and focus on protecting your health and staying on keeping on attack matches. The choice in how you go about it is yours, and with 6 items, you've got a lot of customization options to focus on your specific playstyle, whether it's offensive, defensive, support, etc., etc. This may immediately beg the question though, with that level of customization, how balanced is the game? When I first saw the 6 item slots and how much I could get out of them, in particular when you can level up items to use 2 skills at a time, I was questioning the ramp up of the game in terms of leveling. Hell, there are permanent buffs you can end up buying with tiles in the game in just the regular gameplay, and that would seemingly keep you overpowered for the majority of the game. But surprisingly, after you get past the adjustment period of all the mechanics around the easy floors of 1 to around, let's say 45-ish, it starts to work rather nicely balance-wise. Sure, you'll actually have to grind a bit at times because there will be a boss or set of enemies that will hurt you a hell of a lot, and you'll need the pure stats in order to deal with them. And considering that the base gameplay of puzzle RPGs do have an addictive quality to it with enough variety there, you won't mind it, because grinding a bit is keeping you actively in the game. Speaking of grinding, Dungeon Girl is one of the rare instances where I've seen a stamina meter, aka the mind meter in this game, used really well in its application. It's not oppressive at all from the get-go, as you're not sitting there struggling at every moment to deal with it. It's easy enough to recover enough item points on a regular basis to keep on top of it with recovery items, and top yourself off. Hell, at certain points you'll be able to go to 110, 120, 130%. However, if you don't pay attention to it, all of a sudden, you're using a key turn in your battle to replenish your mind because you're about to run out, and then lo and behold, you lose that battle. It's always present to keep you on your toes, but you don't feel like it's completely weighing you down either. And the fact is, the game gives you enough opportunities to leave the floor every 5 or 10 or so and not lose everything that you've gathered in this run. Although, that's as you try to adjust yourself to the game's visual style and the way that it tries to tell you the information. The game definitely has an older PC look to it, almost PC 98-esque. And truth be told, it can feel a bit claustrophobic the way everything is thrown together here. It doesn't help that the game's only resolution is 960 by 600, with no options for full screen or any adjustment in particular. Now, I'm always cautious on being overly critical when it comes to things like this. Certain games aren't going to have HD resolutions, and some of them don't need it. Puzzle games in particular, yeah, it's nice to have it at 1080, but with the stuff on the screen, you don't necessarily want to stretch it out too far and make bad use of the assets. However, for the case of Dungeon Girl, some of the information here is really compacted, and sometimes it's really hard to tell exactly what I was looking at. Like, it took me an uncomfortably long time to understand what this image was. It's treasure. Now that I look at it, it's like, oh duh, but seriously, there's no reason it needs to be that small. There's also a clutter aspect here, and the fact that sometimes the visual choices have things blend into the background. Like, take the help screen for example. Information here feels sort of thrown on there, and sometimes the arrangement gives me problems in focusing on it. It's also things like the borders here on day and on mind. They blend into the background a tiny bit and aren't very good for the orange and white combination. It seriously hurts my eyes. And compare the size of the log data versus something like the status effects here, it definitely would have helped to have more room on the screen to work with. But let's focus back on the gameplay here and talk about how you grow your character a bit more. One of the major ways to level up your characters is through your party, and you level them up through friend points earned by killing enemies while in the dungeons. These matrices that you can walk through unlock permanent buffs for your characters, such as max mind increases or getting more gold versus ore that you dig up. Each partner has a special skill that they bring to the table once you get that far into the matrix, such as giving you bonus friend points to get even more friend points to unlock more stuff, or helping to stun enemies if you get too many of them attacking you at once. Again, there's some level of customization here, and what I like is that you need to work with all your friends that you come across. Each level increases the amount of friend points you need for each friend in a proportional way where, yeah, getting the buffs from other friends is definitely worth getting, even if you may not use them in a party of 3. You also unlock unique story events for your party here, and that to me is the weakest part of the game. Again, part of this has to do with the presentation, but something about the way that the text came on screen and the assault of colors in front of me really stopped me from enjoying the attempt in storytelling. Like, I can tell you that most of these characters are lighthearted, focusing on one or two major traits with each characters and reinforcing them. Like Nine's reserved nature, for example. No, not that Nine's. But the major problem that occurs here is simple. There's no real stakes when it comes to the story. Yeah, I know, it's a puzzle game, I realize that. It's to tie the game together in some real way. But frankly, some overarching plot would have done well to help me care about these characters. Now, to be fair, these characters are actually part of a universe in all Inu to Nico games. But with this being the first release from Fruitbat Factory translated to English, yeah, there's a bit of missing context here, and frankly, not a lot for me to follow up on. So sadly, the self-contained story fails to get me interested. Frankly, there's not enough depth to go around. Okay, but seriously, I'm getting off topic. Back to the gameplay. Remember how I mentioned the item system before? Well, with materials grabbed and treasures secured, you can level up items by fusing two things together. Now, I will get this off my chest. There's a lot of items here that you can fuse together, and there's a lot of secondary mechanisms with these items that can overflood you with information. Like these stars, for example. They don't necessarily mean what you may think they mean at first. You may think, oh, it's the rarity of the item. But really, it's the strength of the item in terms of the overall game. In addition, I'm unsure what I'm doing even after all these hours of play. Yeah, there's a lot of information here, and I think I know what I'm doing, but at times it just seems like things don't work the way that I think they should, or materials don't fuse together that I really think they should at that point. Regardless, here's the basic gist. You could take two materials to make a new material, or reinforce one of those materials and level them up. With each 10 points of upgrade, your item will get extra buffs, like a lower weight, a lower cost to use the item, or even the ability to get a secondary skill. Again, balance is the key of what this item system does to make it work so well in the game. Sure, I could put everything I have into an upgraded item fully, but there will be a point eventually where the item will not be as useful, as you'll need to get to a higher level star item to gain the HP or mind when you're later down in the dungeons. You need to also balance the cost of items, as yeah, gaining 50 HP percent will be useful at times, but it may be easier to get through fights if you just use the 20% HP item twice and have that flexibility and have those points needed for something else. What's funny about all this, however, is for all the complication of all the skills and mechanics under the surface, this is the perfect game to relax to. There's no timer, there's simply simplicity in the puzzle mechanics with the small 6v6 board here, and it's quick and easy to get through levels even without straining your brain if you want to grind. If you want to get as far as possible on each run in the dungeon, yeah, you'll have to take your time and think every moment out. But you don't have to do that either. The game is a casual puzzle game, but only if you want it to be. It's nice that the game also puts the date portion up here for people who want to challenge themselves to get as far as possible in a short amount of time. Hell, I didn't even mention how the status effects play out, the fact that you can choose a class, and these stats over here. But I don't want to scare people off with too much technical elements of the game, because you don't necessarily need to understand it in order to be successful in the game. You just need the puzzle well. And frankly, that is nice to see when it comes to the base gameplay. What it's really going to come down to on whether Dungeon Girl is worth picking up for you in the end is the focus on the puzzle RPG elements and the gameplay simplicity matched with the mechanics complexity. If you're looking for something to fully engage you, Dungeon Girl is not your game. If you're looking for something to not think about at all while playing, Dungeon Girl is not your game. If you're looking for flashiness, well, you get the idea. But if you're looking for a little bit of challenge, but not too much, while being overly picky about how you make your character work and want to put hours and hours into the game, then yes, Dungeon Girl is for you. Right now, being at a floor 120 out of 200, I'm giving the game a score of 72 out of 100, making it a niche buy for those who love the genre, but a sales title for most others. Of course, that comes with my enhancers, which are listed here. Add or subtract them based on the categories if you fall into them, and if the first digit of your score changes, then refer to the description below to see where the game falls for you. Again, this is based on my gameplay. I did not beat the game yet, and even though I will want to in due time, to get this out on the game's release date, the fact is, I wanted to give you guys something to work with. So there you go. Coming up next on the channel will be that video that I promised regarding my review process, the first part, aka research, and then after that I may sort of come back to sort of a basic state of things. Again, I want to change how I work things on this channel because I want to get content out a little bit more regularly, but on the other hand, I have other things that on my life that I need to focus on, aka focusing on some research stuff, focusing on some more life-altering stuff. So, for now, this is Dragnix signing out, and as always, keep on gaming.